A
I'm
bit
having a bit of a
messy, is
morning.
it?
Can you hear me okay? Am I okay?
Yeah,
Am I
yeah.
pixelated? Is the internet all right?
No, this time it is all fine.
Oh, I just got to turn the heater off. A bit noisy. Excuse me. Welcome, everybody. I'm Charlie Lambden. He is Alex Groundwater, also known as Housing Stig. This is Moving Home with Charlie. And in this video, after a very brief summary at the beginning, I'm going to go into as much detail as I feel is necessary to persuade the cynics among you, those of you who don't believe me or who just haven't seen enough compelling reasoning why house prices in the UK are going to collapse and, in fact, already are collapsing, despite the Office for National Statistics this morning helpfully telling us that house prices are still going up.
Yep.
So I've got a lot of links here. Now, there were too many links to put in. It said you have used too much space when I tried to put the links in. So I put a link to a blog post on my website that contains every link that I'm using in this video. Excuse me. And there are many. There are many. But it is the 18th of October, I believe. Yes, Wednesday, the 18th of October. This morning, the ONS released house price completion figures for August. They also released September's inflation reading, which the CPI was unchanged. And allow me to summarize thus. The substantial time lag in all stages of the house moving process, especially the price reporting at the end, has created a false sense of security among movers who are just looking at the news to get a feel for what's happening in the housing market. What's happening in the housing market at the front line today, and what you read in the papers is happening in the housing market, are poles apart and very bewildering and confusing and misleading. And this video is to try to explain why that confusion and that gap exists and what's actually happening, and also why sorry, I've got a real frog in my throat today. Also why myself and I know Alex have very bleak outlooks for the economy, for wage growth, and thus for house prices. And for those of you who are new here, extra special welcome to all new viewers, and welcome back to all existing followers. Alex and I often sort of sound like we're having a joke and having a laugh at the expense of people who are losing their jobs and companies going bust and people having their houses repossessed.
We're really not.
We're really not enjoying anybody's misfortune. We are simply trying to put a cheerful feeling
Veneer.
to some very, very bleak information. Think of it as gallows humor. Think of it as better, maybe Monty Python-esque, Derek and Clark, whatever you want to call it. It's shit out there, but we can still have a laugh. Doesn't mean we're laughing at anyone's misfortune. And in fact, it's becoming more and more increasingly evident every single day that there are a lot of people losing their jobs at the moment, increasing almost daily. They haven't actually announced layoffs on building sites, but with what's happening in London, where Q3's new starts were 60% down on Q2's new starts. There are no official stats for contractors, are there, Alex? Most of whom those people are, aren't they? Am I right?
Yeah, it's very difficult, whether they're self-employed or small limited company directors and also employees. They tend to hang on. If they're limited companies, they'll hang on before winding up the company. So then they will appear in insolvencies, but that's a long way down the line. It's just hard to tell with that group of people. Permanent employees en masse, notifications are made to the government. Otherwise, it's sort of a hidden statistic.
Exactly. And I think the thing everyone needs to understand is what you read in the news is reporting what's happened in the past. It's not reporting what's happening now, which is why so many people get caught out. And that is effectively what myself and Alex, when he's here to help me, which she is today, are trying to help people just bridge the gap between what the news is telling you and what likely is actually happening in real time today. Now, so just a recap again for all new followers. I have been saying for over a year now that I am expecting, not forecasting, I am expecting house prices to fall on average across the UK 35%, roughly, not exactly, 35% roughly on average across the UK from peak to trough over however long that might take. I think at the moment, this is a guess, that it's going to take around 3 years from the peak to the trough. You can add another year on for that if you want to go until it's actually reported. So we won't see the bottom of the market reported by the land registry until 2026 at the earliest, if my expectations and guessing is correct. Now, I'm not saying, a lot of people misinterpret this as house prices everywhere will fall 35%. No, the average drop will be 35%. Nobody is going to be the average. Many people will see worse drops, and many people will see smaller drops than that. It will vary regionally. It will vary between houses and flats. It will vary between leasehold and freehold, and it'll vary in timing as well. The south is, and southeastern London especially, are falling faster than most places. Birmingham, I think, is falling the fastest at the moment. And the north has been late to the falling party. Some areas in the north are still holding up, but eventually they will see perhaps not quite as large falls as the south, because there will be regional variations. I'm guessing between 15% best case falls and 50% best case falls. Worst case falls. Roughly. No, I have not used spreadsheets to calculate these figures. A lot of people go, well, where's the maths, Charlie, that you did that with? I am more of a big picture fag packet kind of guy. Alex is a numbers guy. He has crunched numbers, but where I say 35%, he's got this massive vague 30 to 40%. So
Massive vague.
massive
Come
vague
on now.
30 to
You
40%
just
real terms. So I mean, I would say that my method's actually better than crunching.
go on, Charlie. You just said 15 to 50%. No, I see where I understand where you're coming from. But to nail a single number is unusual in any financial projection.
Yeah,
But
you can't, exactly. And I'm not, you're not. What we are saying is, anybody who thinks house prices are going to be rising, anything like they've been rising in the last 15 years or the last 10 years, in the coming 5 years, would be gravely mistaken. Would you agree with that, Alex?
with the one caveat of, if wages keep rising, then house prices will not fall. But that seems very, very unlikely.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So based on what you and I, based on the view that we share about the economy and jobs, etc.,
Yeah.
and debt, based on that, unless we're very wrong on that, wages will resume their negative growth.
Yes.
In fact, we have a bet on that, don't we? On the time, not whether it will or won't, but on the timing of it. So I'm really, today, I'm talking to you. If you are someone who's actually quite new to this conversation, don't really have an opinion one way or the other, would just like to know what's happening, or if you're someone who's been watching me for a long time and thinks I'm talking bollocks, well, join the club. I mean, there's a lot of people who think that. And what the most annoying thing in my life is that when eventually it turns out that I wasn't talking bollocks, no one really remembers that they disagreed with me. Oh, did I disagree with each other? Oh, really? Oh, right, okay. It's amazing how 99% of people go, oh, I don't remember not agreeing with you. But if you say so, about 1% of people go, yeah, fair cop, you called it. So let's get into this. I want to start. Look at that, 10 minutes of ramble already. I would like to start by as swiftly as possible without laboring it, because in order to understand why house prices are going to come down substantially and far more than anyone in the media in terms of the institutions are predicting, you need to understand three things. How we got here. So what's happened in the past that's led to the position we're in now, number one. Number two, the timing gap, which is what's catching a lot of people out right now, both buyers and sellers being caught out by that gap. And number three, what is statistically highly likely to be happening in terms of employment, unemployment, job vacancies, and wages in the coming years. Highly likely statistically because of what you can see happening in lots of strong economic leading indicators. So that's three things I'm going to go through here. Let me crack straight into thing number one. So how do we get here? Where are we right now? And Alex, just jump at any time. Tell me to shut up. Tell me I'm wrong. Disagree,
No
or,
problem.
or whatever. Just chime in. Very briefly, this is a house price graph going from January 2005 to August 2023, and it's broken around by country. And you've got England at the top here. And what you'll see is they've all got a similar trend, right? The ups and the downs, similar trend. And today's data was what was reported, showing the overall 291,000 is the average of all four countries. Okay, but obviously look at the differences there: 309,000 for England, 216 for Wales, 194 for Scotland, and 173 for Northern Ireland. But what it does show is that since March, prices have gone up and up and up and up and up since March. The land registry has shown average house prices in the UK rising non-stop for 6 months. Which is we'll come back to that, right? We're going to come back to that when we get to section 2. But that's where, but looking back, you can see that house prices have starting down here, they've come a long way, right? And what you need to do is understand the reasons. Like, no one's disputing nominal house prices, not adjusted for inflation. No one's disputing that house prices have risen a long way in the last 15, 18 years. Okay? But you need to understand why. And here are 5 quick reasons, okay? And then we'll move on to the next stage. So, reason number 1, quantitative easing. The Bank of England doing what some people call printing money, some people call buying bonds, and they were doing that from 2009
Correct.
until, and here it says at the bottom, we stopped buying bonds at the end of 2021.
Yeah, there was a sort of a gap there from the QE because of the financial crisis to the new round of printing that happened because of COVID. But they didn't start QT, the tightening process, until
November
22.
Yeah, right, exactly. We actively began selling bonds in November 22, which is undoing. So QE, there are varying opinions on this, but a lot of people are of the opinion that QE contributed to monetary, money supply, that kind of stuff, more money into the economy, and it contributed to rising house prices. Some people don't think it did, but generally speaking, a lot of people think it did. That's number 1. Number 2, who remembers this boy? Help to Buy. Help to Buy started in 2013, but you can no longer apply for a Help to Buy. So QE started and stopped. Help to Buy started and stopped. Number 3, this made a big difference during the pandemic. Stamp duty, land tax, temporary reduced rates. A couple of years of that. That started, and it literally, you saw the effect it had on house prices, and then it stopped. And then we had all the money that the government put into our pockets during COVID. £372 billion. And even if you ignore the support for businesses, the support for health and social care, and support for other public services, that's £55 billion support for individuals.
Yeah, and that, Charlie, just to be clear, the first round of QE to get us out of the GFC didn't really have much of an impact on house prices. And the reason that it didn't, and the way we know it didn't, is that house prices, even nominally, if you go back to that graph, didn't change until about 2013.
Yeah.
And that was when Help to Buy and the other stimulus started.
Yeah.
Whereas, but that's because QE was not given to individuals to buy houses. QE went into the financial system,
Yes.
which is why it inflated stock markets and other assets.
Yeah.
But whereas this COVID money, that went straight in people's hands and they spent it on houses, which is why there is that sudden massive, uptick over the COVID period.
And they spent it on houses when the stamp duty holiday was in place as well.
Correct.
Okay.
And Help to Buy still existed.
Yeah. But there's one more, possibly even the largest stimulus of all. Anyone? Bueller? Low interest rates.
Oh yeah.
0.5%, 0.25% in 2016, 0.5%. Oh no, 0.75%. Oh, 0.1%. Right, well, this is obviously the new normal, isn't it? Uh-oh. No, it's not. It's gone up horribly. So that was another major part of stimulus that led to house prices. So there's 5 things: COVID money, interest rates, QE, Help to Buy, stamp duty holiday. All government stimulus that all fed into, COVID money that fed into house prices. And that is why we got to this massively overheated house price peak about a year ago, although the land registry hasn't caught up yet. Bless them. So that's part 1. So, Alex, yes, you broadly agree with me, right? Those things were all government policy stimulus, all of which, to a greater or lesser degree, contributed to house prices growing over that period.
And here's the important point, and it's something that people have got to bear in mind when looking at the future. After the GFC, interest rates got slashed in up to 2009 to an average of 0.5%. So interest rates 0.5%. You'd think everyone that you speak to tells you that house prices are dependent on interest rates. Actually, not the strongest correlation. And we can see that because house prices did not suddenly take off in real terms when interest rates were 0.5%. In fact, they had to bring in Help to Buy. And even then, they didn't take off until wages started to increase. So the QE at that point made very little difference. They tried the interest rates. That didn't make the difference. They put in Help to Buy. That sort of started it, but it wasn't until wages were growing that really it started. And then everyone went, okay, we can relax. It's all good. We've got the stamp duty holiday, everything in place. But that means you've put in place already 4 separate stimulus mechanisms.
Yeah.
And then the thing that broke it, the thing that caused the ridiculous highs in 21, 22, was then putting the cash in people's hands.
Yeah.
But that's on top of the other pieces that hadn't worked individually or only worked when prescribed together. It's like somebody with high blood pressure. They put them on a beta blocker or an ACE inhibitor, but that doesn't fix it. So then they put them on another pill and another pill and another pill. And by the time they hit 4 pills, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
But then giving the money, I mean, that was like sort of mainlining some sort of hypertensive thing.
Yeah. And so this is your graph here, which anyone can see. If you find Alex Groundwater on Twitter or on X, go to his pinned tweet and you'll see this graph. It's the first one there. And so for all the people who think, well, as soon as interest rates come back down, house prices will shoot up. No. Look at this graph. That blue line, when it goes all the way down in January in 2009 to very low interest rates, house prices still came down for a while.
Yeah, so, this is in real terms, let's be clear.
So low interest rates do not automatically mean house prices going up. That's the point. A lot of people are making the mistake. I see it every day. Well, as soon as rates come back down, house prices are going to shoot up again. No.
Not unless wages go up.
Not unless you've got all of this massive stimulus as well. Okay? So that's how we got here. That's how we got to where we are today, with massively overinflated house prices about a year ago. Now, section 2. So that's where we are, and it's how we got here, and it's why house prices went up so much. Imagine what they would have done without all that stuff. Imagine what house prices would have done without any of that stimulus.
They would have corrected by about minus 35%, Charlie, and that was back in 2007.
35%, did you say?
Yeah, roughly, because that's in line with wages. You see, it's about 36% down, in fact.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that was phase 1. Section 1 is done. How we got to where we got with house prices. Section 2, where are we today? This is great fun. I'm looking forward to this. I have been really looking forward to this segment. Okay, really, really good fun. Okay, so here we are. So, take it from the authorities. Don't take it from me. What do I know? Let's just look at what all of the credible institutions are saying about house prices today. So let's just whip through these very, very quickly. The Halifax, sorry, yeah, that's right, the Halifax most recently reported an annual drop in house prices of 4.7%. Price falls year on year. Great. Okay. Well, they're a big lender. Everyone trusts them. So that must be right. So let's see what Nationwide says. Can you? There we are.
Yeah, it's fine. It's updated.
Um, 5.3% year on year falls. Okay, 4.7%, 5.3%. Let's average it out. Let's call it 5%, shall we? All right, 5% year on year. Okay, but let's just back that up. Let's just make sure that the big house price indices agree with this. Zoopla. UK house prices have fallen 5%. No, sorry, that's 0.5% over the last. Hang on a second. Zoopla thinks only 0.5% down in the last 12 months. Okay, well, I'm a bit confused now. Let's see what Rightmove says. Rightmove. Ooh, down only 0.8%. Well, now I'm really bewildered, but at least, they are all saying year on year house price falls anywhere from 0.5% down year on year to 5.3% down year on year. But I know, Alex, let's look up the land registry because that's the official one, isn't it? That's the official one. Just to clear it up. This should clear it all up for us. Annual price change report in the UK was, sorry, what? Is that a typo? Up 0.2%. What the flock are people supposed to think if they want to know what's actually happening to house prices today? When you look at that shower of that array of bewildering house price data, and I'm not going to spend this video going into why they are all so different. There are lots of reasons. But the most important thing, because people quite rightly go, well, hang on, the land registry is recording actual completed transaction prices, isn't it? So isn't that the one we should follow? Well, yes, it does, but only when they've completed recording all the transactions, which they don't. So today, this morning, barely a few hours ago, they reported August house prices. Alex, you aren't able to just look up how many transactions they actually use, are you?
Oh, it'll take a little while, but I would guess about 8,000.
Okay, so it's like a tiny percentage.
10
So
to 15%.
what we've got is a 10 to 15% sample from the land registry so far, because they will not finish registering August 23 completions for another 12 months at least, correct?
Correct.
So we've got to wait another year until we know for sure whether more than 80% of transactions have been recorded, what actually happened with the completions that were registered in August 23. And now let's just remind everyone else that the other big gap here is that this is completions registered in August 23, which is for transactions that were agreed back around March 2023. And if everybody remembers, in March, it was the spring, it was the bounce, it was the dead cat bounce. It was, oh, it's okay. Lending's going back up. Mortgage approvals went up. Everyone thought, oh, we've narrowly avoided it. House prices aren't going to come down. So what you're seeing here is a small sample of the transactions being agreed in the spring when there was that dead cat bounce, which explains that funny little uptick that we've got in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, there is another. Go on.
Yeah, that's also caused by the wage increases.
And one other factor, which is, as we have seen, and as Rightmove's data shows, there's been an increase in larger, higher value properties being sold.
100%.
The downsizing. And what does that do to an average figure?
Well, when you have a smaller sample size, so because so many fewer transactions are happening, if a larger percentage of them are more expensive properties, it would appear that your average property price has gone up. When in fact, if you compared properties like for like, the individual property price of a 3-bedroom semi in Barnes versus a 3-bedroom semi in Barnes 2 years earlier may well have got dropped dramatically.
So, guys, understand that even though the official government land registry data shows average, it doesn't show house prices are going up, it shows the average price of a transaction has gone up. That does not mean that prices are going up. And there is an increasing amount of evidence showing that there is a downsizing happening. And I'm just going to point to the one bit of that I've got right here, because it does actually show you that there are definitely more people. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Come on, come on. I'm on just one moment, caller. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong page. Oh no, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. I've got to share this tab instead. So the annual change, this is Rightmove's most recent data that just came out this week, all right? The annual change on first-time buyer properties, this is asking prices, is only 0.2% down. Second steppers, 0.7% down. And top of the ladder, 1.5% down. So it's only asking prices, and that is only an indication, but it does suggest there are more people selling higher value properties, which would lead to the overall average figure going up, even though individual house values are coming down, which they are. So really important that everyone understands it. This is confusing. This is a head fuck. If you don't do this as much as you and I do, this is very difficult to get your head around. So that is the end of section 2, which is where we are today. Now, sorry, it's not quite the end, because I've actually got to answer where we are today, because there is no data for where we are today. That's what the house price indices say. Where we are today, I talk to agents, conveyancers, search pack providers, mortgage brokers on a daily basis. And all of them, without exception, are reporting that transaction volumes are very low. They're really struggling to get even well-priced properties sold, to even get viewings and offers on the table. And it looks like it's going to continue to get worse before it gets better. And so, for example, Daniel, so the property search packs that I provide are done through a company called Property Searches Direct. And he is saying that the transactions, he provides them for the whole country. And he's seen transactions way down. And we've got agents left, right, and centre going, even the stuff they thought was really sensibly priced isn't selling. There are areas where it is. There are areas, right? There are areas where sensibly priced in-demand property will still sell. There are still people buying homes. Okay? I am not for a minute saying that nothing is selling. But overall, the market is, a number of agents have said to me, it's carnage. And they're talking about the combination of sellers refusing to lower prices, buyers refusing to offer enough to get the transaction done. But even when they do get a transaction done, lenders then down valuing. So they finally manage to get a deal together and the lender comes along and torpedoes it. Or the transaction falling apart because the chain falls apart. Somewhere else in the chain fell apart, even when your part of the chain was good. That's why it's carnage out there. It's a combination of all of those things. So if you just looked at land registry, you'd think everything was fine.
And Charlie, just so you know, the Land Registry August data is based on 9,153 records, which, given the estimate of how many transactions actually occurred in August, is roughly 15%. And as one of your audience members, Dave Spiegel, points out, and is absolutely correct, this is not a sample, in that this is not randomly selected in order to give you an accurate representation of the market. That's just the first 15% they came to. So if that happened to include a higher number of expensive properties, no one would know until later. And they will continue to update that. Well, they'll update it for nearly 2 years materially, but it will be at least another 8 to 9 months before it's even 80% accurate.
Yeah. So if you want to know where we are today, there are always outliers, there are always exceptions. I know of people who've sold their houses very quickly for asking price. I also know of people who have been genuinely trying to get below the market, cutting deep and hard, and they're still just tumbleweed blowing past their front door. No buyers, no inquiries. Of course, both extreme anecdotes exist, but overall in the market, it is as tough as it's been since probably the early 90s. In fact, that's what Daniel said to me. He said it's the worst he's known it in his entire time in the industry, which started in the early 90s. Right, so what happens next? Why do Alex and I think house prices are going to go down? So one of the questions is, people often say, well, hang on, interest rates are going to come down at some point and the government will bail us out, won't they? There'll be stimulus. I'd like to answer those questions at the end. Let's just look at the things that given the fact that we know that wage growth correlates the most strongly with house prices of all things, let's just look at the things that are going to affect people's wages in the coming years and what's going to happen with house prices on the back of that. So here are a few things that I've picked at random. And please, could you just remind me what you know about in terms of how much this is a leading indicator or not? Let's just start with mortgage approvals. Bank of England seasonally adjusted mortgage approvals. That light blue, that pale blue line on that graph is new purchase mortgages for houses. Look at that trend. Look where it's going. Okay, it's as low. It's the lowest it's been, except for last September, about a year ago, after the mini budget. It's the lowest it's been, and ignoring the pandemic, since 2011.
Correct.
And what does that tell us?
Oh, the demand for housing has reduced significantly. This is the number of approvals. What's very interesting is the value of each approval, which is why they don't do a graph for that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they do a total so that you have to divide it through yourself. And that is a very good leading indicator of house prices. This tells you that the market is stagnating. Because the demand has gone, because people can't afford the mortgages, because of the cost of living crisis, and in fact, wages haven't risen enough. But when you divide through the actual values of the mortgages, you can see that there is at least a 10% drop, unless the bank of granny and grandpa or mum and dad have managed to augment any deposits that people have to make up that shortfall. And that would be very against trend.
Right. Okay. So that's mortgage approvals. Mortgage approvals currently showing as a negative leading indicator. Next up, we have, ladies and gentlemen, real wage growth just for the last couple of years. And it's the red line there is the one that is real regular pay. Okay. And you can see that where it goes below that line of zero, that's when real wages are shrinking. Once adjusted for inflation, the value of people's take-home money is reducing. And look when that started going negative. November 21. December 21. Nearly 2 years ago. There wasn't much talk of it, was there, at the time?
No, because people didn't feel that way to people, because they weren't spending as much because they were either worried about COVID, or they were getting furlough money topped up by their companies and not going into work. So they still had more disposable income, which is why we had a vast increase in savings over that time. It wasn't until about October of 22, and you can see that correlates then with the downturn in house prices, even for the ONS. That's when people started to realize, Christ, my food bill really is huge, and inflation isn't transitory and just disappearing.
So the huge difference in that gap between nominal and real is that it's what should we call it? It's that trap, isn't it? It's
it's the illusion. It's the just like house prices since 2008. The illusion that you have become so much wealthier, and actually it's not able to buy you. You're only wealthier if you can buy more with it. If you cannot buy more stuff, you are not wealthier.
You can buy less stuff, you are poorer. So that's wages. Now, wages have, according to this, turned positive. And I've got 2 comments on this, right? So regular pay has, even after adjusting for inflation, real pay has turned positive in the last couple of months. June. It actually went, so June, July, August. That's the last month we've got the data for. But as everybody knows, in the real world, ordinary people, the real difference in their disposable income is worse than that.
Well, and bear in mind, these numbers are terribly skewed, because you have financial services, other services, manufacturing, and so on, and construction. they are all combined here to come up with one wage.
Yeah.
Now, if you work in financial services up until this point, you've actually enjoyed a greater than 10%
Yeah.
pay rise. However, if you worked in construction, you're way below inflation. So what we've got is sections of society who really are genuinely slightly wealthier, not much, but slightly wealthier than they were. But you've got large sectors of society that are very much poorer. Well, they still have houses and mortgages or wish to buy houses, and they're screwed. We are yet again dividing society into the haves and have-nots.
Yeah. So just before I leave that graph where the red line is below the zero mark is real wages shrinking, which is a very strong correlation for reducing house prices. Now, the next leading indicator we've got is the RICS monthly survey, which came out last week. And I'll just get straight to the point. Meanwhile, house prices remain on a downward trajectory at the national level. Indeed, the September net balance of minus 69%, that's the balance of survey respondents, is virtually unchanged from last month, minus 68%, signaling the pace at which house prices are falling has been consistent over the past couple of months. And by the way, 69% is one of the most negative readings they've had, the most negative reading they've had since the last downturn. When disaggregated, or while almost all parts of the UK are seeing house prices retreat at present, the downward pressure appears most significant across the West Midlands and the southeast of England. Going forward, near-term expectations point to a further pullback in prices over the coming 3 months. That's further falls in prices in the coming 3 months. Although the latest net balance of minus 48 is not quite as negative as the minus 65% returned last time around. So that's the RICS showing it. Now, and they're talking about the 12-month horizon, the national net balance. Now, this is where they're just guessing. They're saying, what do you think a year from now? And they're guessing. It's still negative. It's less negative than it was, but a year out, they're not that accurate. 3 months out, they are. So that's that forward indicator. Next, job vacancies. Number of vacancies in the UK, this is quarterly job vacancies. And this is, that was, what was the peak was May 2022. And job vacancies have been falling since then. Down. And this month, the most recent quarter, they've dropped to below 1 million for the first time since, There's still quite a lot of vacancies there, right? The number of vacancies is still high, but I don't know what the kind of lag is on this. I don't know exactly where the survey data comes from, but job vacancies are falling. And here's another one. This is seasonally adjusted new building starts. And the most recent figures are only available for the Q1 of this year, which were 12% down the previous year. And that's a very small number. If you want to be building 250,000 or 300,000 houses a year, you've got to be doing a lot more than 12,000 a month, haven't you?
Yes.
That's like half what it needs to be. So new building starts are down. Unemployment is rising. It's still relatively low, ignoring all of the fudging of the figures where we could argue it's actually worse than it's reported. Let's just take it at face value. But it increased by 0.5% in the last quarter to 4.3% and is increasing. Reuters, this is a few months ago, the UK on track for the most company insolvencies since 2009. What do you think that is going to do for wages? It's not good. And just yesterday, Bloomberg reported that in London, new home construction starts sink to their lowest since 2009. And actually, the massive number here is that they were 60% down on the previous quarter. That is a collapse by anyone's measure. All right. So putting all of that together, and then recently you and I both had a lot of people, especially on Twitter, on X, we've had a lot of anecdotal stories of job losses, haven't we?
Oh yeah.
Cutbacks. Knight Frank laying off 100, or was it 200? Can't remember. Knight Frank laying off 100 people. Rolls-Royce in the aviation sector that I thought was pretty bulletproof, yesterday announced 2,500 job losses. That's worldwide, but still, it's a UK-based company. And I think if it's less than 300 job losses, you don't have to report it, do you?
No. No, it depends on how it's structured across departments. But if you can keep the headcount spread across different departments to a small enough number, it means you don't have to have a consultation period and you don't have to report it.
Yesterday, I heard from one of my followers that a computer games design company in Brighton shed 800 jobs.
Yeah.
It's one company in one town. And this is happening further and further. And all the banks have been letting people go in small numbers as well. The trickle is starting to turn into a stream.
Well,
It's
did
not
you
yet.
see KPMG have are cutting wages and also staff in their deals team? What
Yeah.
does that tell you about what they think is going to happen to the future outlook for the economy when you are reducing the size and the pay of your deals team?
Yeah. And the government's got no money to invest because it can't afford to pay its debts. So there's
Yep.
no prospect of any tax cuts. They've even said as much. So yeah, okay, let's just talk about people who think, well, hang on, Charlie, let's just accept this question at face value as an innocent and sincere question. Why won't the government bail the economy and everybody out? Why won't they do that? Why can't they cut interest rates again? For example, let's just,
Well,
just ask innocent questions.
because the government's not in control of interest rates,
Right,
number one.
that's number one, right? So why can't they just shake the magic money tree like they did at COVID?
They're
Why
not in
can't?
charge of the magic money tree.
But then, how do they manage to borrow during COVID?
Well, because between the Treasury and the Bank of England, they agreed that they would give more stimulus
Right.
because
Okay.
there was a national emergency.
So the Bank of England was buying government bonds in large quantities.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why we are now having to pay, and that's part of the problem. We are now having to pay 150 billion pounds to the Bank of England over the next, and it's an estimate, over the next roughly 10 years to cover the losses that they're going to have on the bonds that they bought. Because the
Yeah.
government signed us up as the taxpayer to make sure that the BOE was covered for any losses. So that's some more cash that we've got to pay out.
And so why else can't they? So what are the stimulus? So why can't they? Why can't they do more QE? Why can't they print more money? Just print money. Right?
Inflation isn't inflation a wonderful thing? We love inflation. And let's work the scenarios through. It's really simple. So let's say they go the QE route to make people believe, like a salve on a burn, to make people believe with a little illusion that they're actually okay. Inflation goes up, which means that in reality, real wages have dropped. Even though you've got the same nominal wage, what you can buy with it continues to decrease. House prices, therefore, will crash. The alternative is they don't do any QE. They try and raise interest rates. They beat inflation, but by raising interest rates, they make mortgages totally unaffordable. Lots of people end up being repossessed, and therefore house prices crash. There is, in fact, no soft, bloody landing out of this because we are already in the situation where we have inflation, albeit decreasing, and we have vast debts that we cannot service in a country that is not productive. If you mix those three things together, you don't have a salve for your burn. You've got kerosene or napalm that you've just poured all over it.
Yeah. Right. So QE won't help. QE would make house prices crash. Not doing QE will make house prices crash. Um, what about a stamp duty holiday? What about if they just decided to abolish stamp duty?
No, it's peanuts. I mean,
It doesn't
yes,
affect borrowing, does it? It doesn't affect access to money. It doesn't affect
no,
people's ability to get a mortgage.
no. The only stimulus that I can see that would actually work, and I'm not for one second suggesting it's a good idea, but the only thing would be another MIRA scheme, because that way, with the income relief at source, it's going to make it cheaper and easier for people. But of course, bear in mind that will mean that everyone then switches to interest-only mortgages, which just stores up the problem for 25, 30, 35 years in the future when they get to the end of term and realize that they haven't got enough savings, shares, whatever it may be, to pay off the actual house. So the only potential scheme that I can see working is one that just causes even more pain in 25 to 35 years.
25, 35 years.
Yeah, well, not my problem. I'll be dead. So
Yeah.
that's all right.
Right. So, what other stimulus could they? So, COVID stimulus was a one-off thing. So they can't do QE. They can't lower interest rates. because of inflation. Not yet, anyway.
Yep.
What other stimulus could there be? Help to Buy scheme. So Labour is mooting a first-time buyer's mortgage guarantee for new builds, aren't they? They
Yes.
are. That's what they're mooting. And well, they've got to get voted in. We've got to get past an election yet. And I think let's just assume that they did that, and let's assume that that alone was enough to make house prices go up, which it wouldn't be because you've got to have all those things. It's still a long way off. And even when the stimulus are announced, they take a year to filter through the system before you start to see it in house prices. So that's, even if that was going to happen, that's 2 years away, right? Now, so someone has, Jackie Chandler's got a comment here, which reminds me of something I wanted to say. So frustrated that prices aren't tanking sooner. I'm at a loss to explain some of the pricing I'm seeing locally. The only thing madder than these listings is those buying. So I've been asking myself, house prices have not fallen as fast as I expected them to so far. Okay, they definitely, this time last year, I did genuinely think house prices would have come down further, even allowing for time lag on reporting. And I've asked myself, what is the reason? What is the reason? And there's no single reason other than when you look at all that data, like I just went through about the house price data, most people were unaware that there's a problem. And most people are just addicted to the idea of buying a house. And if they can get the finance, then they're going to buy. And most people think, well, there's some talk of it. I've got 5% off. I am so worried for people who bought in the last 12 months that didn't get an absolute bargain price. If they bought because they can afford it, it doesn't matter, and they're going to be there for a long time. Cool. But I'm really worried about the number of people who've got 90% mortgages in the last year and gone out and bought. Really worried. So yes, house prices have taken much longer than I expected to start falling, but it doesn't change my view. Rather than a sort of smooth S shape down, it's sort of like oof.
And I still think, Charlie, that you're right. Partly that is because people don't understand the situation that the country and potentially they are in. Although I think that's less common now than it was, say, 6 months ago. But it's also because wages have been unbelievably resilient. People not expecting. We saw at the end of, by October of last year, wages were down in real terms 2.7%, minus 2.7%. And there was no reason to expect, given that the economy wasn't getting any better and that the stimulus had all ended, that wages would then increase. I mean, yes, there would be nominal increases, but they wouldn't beat inflation. My projection was that by the end of this year, wages would be down minus 5.5% in real terms. So they would basically, the loss would have doubled from October of last year, roughly.
Yeah. And do you think that's been funded with debt?
Yes, and that's the problem, is that these companies, who are many of them zombie companies, if you look at the FTSE 250, you could argue that somewhere between 10 and 20% of FTSE 250 companies are trading on intangibles and goodwill, so not tangible, real, liquid assets that they could potentially sell, and vast amounts of low-cost debt, hugely over-leveraged. And maybe they haven't had to refinance. Maybe my calculations on how quickly they have to refinance have changed. Maybe some of them got in, they had clever CFOs and they refinanced at the beginning of 21 or sometime in 21 before the interest rates really bit. But to this point, they've been so concerned about losing staff that they have been hoarding and they've been willing to pay. As we've discussed a few times now, I believe that has come to an end already, and we're going to start seeing real wage falls again now. But we'll see how that goes.
Right, I've got a good question here from Ali P on YouTube. What's your view on selling a residential home at auction rather than via an estate agent? Month-long online auctions with fixed reserve seem to be increasingly popular. What's the downside? The downside is you're going to get less money. That's the only downside. Otherwise, the upside is certainty of sale. That's the short answer to that question. Emma Anderson says, well, this is depressing. It is. Do you know, it would be less depressing if these house price falls were going to then wind up with everyone be able to afford houses again. But because of what's happening to the economy and employment and everything else, and wages likely to fall, that's not going to happen for a while.
No.
Dave Spiegel says Maris would be so insanely expensive you couldn't do it 80 star without another bond run.
I'm not sure why it would be expensive. All it is the government reducing its tax take. And unfortunately, in comparison with the debt we have, the government's tax take doesn't cover the bills anyway. So taking another chunk out of it, if you could explain what you mean by insanely expensive, it would only help people on the interest component of their mortgage. So yes, I agree. If all 1.6 trillion of mortgage debt was converted to interest only, then a 20% reduction on that is a fairly substantial sum. But that's not what would happen. It would, and you could limit it to being only people who are starting new mortgages. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could do.
Just giving Jamie Boy 14 a thumbs up there. I'm reading some of his comments here. So, guys, do we have any more questions? I mean, lots of comments. I'm just trying to scroll through and find questions here. Emma Anderson also says boomers will keep this party going in lots of ways. Yeah, but not forever.
No, not for much longer. About another somewhere between 10 and 20 years.
Yeah. Good question here from Tom Rowland. The ONS data shows that a significant number of transactions were cash buyers. Does that affect the data from Nationwide and Halifax? Yes. It doesn't change the Nationwide and Halifax data. What it means is that the number of cash buyers is actually staying pretty steady, isn't it, Alex? And the number of mortgage buyers is reducing. So there are cash buyers out there transacting. Yeah. But cash transactions, typically speaking, are lower than mortgage transactions because sellers accept lower prices from cash buyers in return for the improved certainty of a deal happening and no lender around to down value. Jamie Boy says, give us hope. Oh, God, that's a tough one. Everything will be okay. Sun will still rise. The world will keep turning. Or Craig Wood asked a difficult question. Charlie, if you had an offer accepted but knew that it wouldn't go through for another 6 months due to probate, what would you do if prices had fallen significantly since you put your original offer in? Well, I mean, my original offer would have factored that timing in. I mean, if your view on the world has changed in that 6 months unexpectedly, and you're no longer comfortable, but as in you do not want to continue at that original price, then you've got no choice but to say, guys, I'm afraid my price has changed because the time has changed and the world has changed. Don't overpay. Don't pay more than you're comfortable doing. By the way, guys, just a quick reminder, I have a podcast, an audio podcast on Apple, on Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. And at the end of these live streams, I split out the audio and I upload it onto that, up to the Moving Home with Charlie podcast. So that's why I always read these questions out, by the way. Yes, someone said, excuse my ignorance, what is MIRAS? It's Mortgage Interest Relief at Source. And basically, they deduct the interest element of your mortgage payment from your salary before they apply your income tax. On PAYE, that is.
Correct.
Well, that's how it used to work anyway. Have you got any? Can you spot any good ones? Have you seen any good?
Oh, sorry, I'm just doing some calculations.
Okay. Any more questions? When will we see the bottom of the market? Rakib Ali says, well, okay, so it depends where you are because the bottom of the market will happen at different times for different regions, different property types, and different transaction types, if that makes sense. The third one is a bit more tenuous, okay? The only way to see the bottom of the market, and everyone asks this all the time, the only way to see it in the market you are looking to buy or sell in, or to buy it, is to be out viewing the properties that you want to buy. If you are consistently out viewing them and putting in offers on stuff that you like, even if it's not going to get accepted, and getting to know the agents, the first sign of the bottom being reached in any particular market, whether it's just for flats in this town or for houses in that place, wherever it might be, is a significant increase in the number of buyer registrations with estate agents. Now, as a CRM provider to estate agents, that's one of the pieces of data that I get to see before anybody else. It's one of the ways I'm able to see stuff. So for those of you who think I'm just a doom monger and I'm just a house price crash guy, I've never said crash. I've always said slide. It just so happened that when I started doing these videos, this is what I was seeing. Okay, and when the market does turn, I will be the first to tell you. Okay, you might hear the industry saying, "Hey, it's all better. It's all come back to life." I mean, any slight reduction in how bad things are will be touted as it's over, everything's fine again by agents long before it's actually fine.
Just quickly on the Myers thing, Mr. Spiegel, please check these numbers, because obviously only 37.5% of people in this country as homeowners have a mortgage, so around 10 million. Obviously, not all 10 million would be taking this, because many of them have nearly paid off and so on and so forth. Doing the calculation based on a large percentage of people with mortgages moving to not an interest only necessarily, but a repayment with interest payments, I think for a cost of roughly £16 billion a year, which in the overall scheme of the budget is peanuts, would save £2,000 a year in the 20% tax relief to homeowners. Now, honestly, 2,000 to many people may not sound like a lot of money, but £2,000 a year to someone who's looking to buy their first home could make all the difference. That couple of £100 or 180 quid a month may be enough for them to get a house. So I don't think it's as expensive as you believe.
Okay. Ivan Georgiev on YouTube says, do I need to buy a conveyancing report and search packs on a brand new property? If you're getting a mortgage, yes. I mean, you can't buy or sell a house without a conveyancer. So you have to have a conveyancer to do the legal transaction for you. But search packs, they are at your discretion if you're a cash buyer, but it would be a ridiculous false economy not to do it. Guys, this is the last question. I'm going to wrap up with this question. Kabamaru TV on YouTube says, have prices gone down or not? I'm totally confused. I can't answer that question unless I know what properties, house or flat, what area, what region, what budget level, low or high. I can't answer, okay? But overall, yes, at the front line, they definitely have come down. It's just not being reported. I mean, and all the indices are now reporting year-on-year price falls. The land industry is just very depleted with its reporting. So, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. To those of you complaining about my long intro, you will notice that actually it's only there while it's live, and soon afterwards I'm actually trimming it off the front of videos, so it's starting to come off older videos. And for anyone,
last question quickly,
yes?
Charlie.
Yeah, sure.
Nathan, not even a question, but Nathan, yes, extremely unfair to renters, and as more and more of the population.
I'm going to read the question out. Isn't a Myra scheme massively unfair for renters, or do you think any rent relief scheme could be introduced? I'm a homeowner with no mortgage, but still think the government stays out of it. Yeah. So yeah, it's very unfair, isn't it? Yeah.
And more of the population are becoming renters. You know, we've dropped from 71% owners to about 62%, and that is continuing to fall in terms of ownership. And I can only see private rental and social rental increasing over the next decade and onwards.
Right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up with a quick reminder that if you're buying, don't overpay. Make sure you got your conveyancer, a mortgage in principle, and ready to buy a search pack. And if you're a seller, don't overprice. Also have a search pack. We'll speed up the sale if you want it. You can book time with me if you want to talk about your situation on the link down there, mhwc.co.uk, my website. You can also get in touch with my conveyancers and my mortgage partners there if you can't find your own. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a great one. And remember about the time lag in the media's reporting of what's happening in house prices. Alex, thank you very much. See you next time. Everyone else, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.